The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
And thank you, Emily. Good afternoon. It is one of those beautiful days that we like to call fall in America. I'm Matt McKoy. My guest host, of course, is Pastor Delmar Austin, and we are The View From A Pew. And you can reach us by email at mac@theviewfromapew.com anytime you'd like to reach us. Now, Pastor has been on vacation for a while, and he's going to tell us about where he was and the peaches that he picked for me. And also, then, we're kind of picking up where we left off a few weeks ago on talking about music.
Yes.
And the music of the church. Now, I don't want to involve him unless he wants to involve himself. And so I'm going to make a political statement here. And this is not the opinion of Pastor Austin or anybody from the church or anything. This is just Mac and the big mouth. We just lost, I think it was the third or fourth superintendent in the history of Boys Town. Boys Town started by a Catholic priest by the name of
Father Flanagan.
And, of course, Mickey Rooney played one of the first boys, right? And who was Father Flanagan?
Spencer Tracy.
And the reason I'm bringing this up, and I don't have the press release in front of me. I've talked to enough people. I think I got what's going on here. But Boys Town has always been a Catholic organization, and not just a Christian, not just a religion, but also a denomination, because it was founded by the Catholic Church. Well, last week, the superintendent stepped down, and at the same time, there was a press release that went out that they will no longer be a, exclusive Catholic or exclusive Christian organization anymore, that they need to stretch out and let kids of other religions and denominations, and the denomination's never been an issue. You don't have to be Catholic to go there. But now kids who are Hindu or Muslim or whatever they are, don't mean to be rude by saying that, but whatever they are now welcome, and they can practice their own religion there. And I'm about up to here, and you can't see me, but I'm about up to the top of my head with this beaten up Christian stuff. I know that if you're listening to this show, you're probably in the same camp that I am. But every time we turn around, God's getting a black eye. And he's going to continue to take it because we know the ending. But sometimes I think, and again, this is my opinion, not pastors, sometimes I think it's time that we Christians don't turn the other cheek. That we stand up and say, hey, wait a minute. Our school system has gone to heck in a handbasket in the last 50 years. We had number one in reading, writing, all of that in the whole world. Now we're lucky to be top 10. And it happened when they took God out of school. Guess what, liberals? It didn't work. We've tried your experiment, and we're going to heck in a handbasket. And if you can't see it, oh, that's right, you're woke. You're not supposed to see it. Shame. No, I can't say that because I don't want to do that. I'll pray for you that you people who don't recognize that there is a greater power amongst us, and you people call yourself woke, it's time you woke up and understand what you're doing to this country. And thank God I'm 64 and not 24, because I wouldn't want to have any kids brought into this world under these circumstances.
Mac,
so, there.
Mac, I didn't read the statement that Boys Town put out, but it concerns me if they are really moving in that direction, because you can be very open to other beliefs. You can be supportive of what other people believe. You can allow freedom for others and not lose your own identity.
Right.
Christians should be proud of their identity. They should be proud of what they offer in this world. And to backtrack on that is, I think, a big mistake.
Yeah, but it's this thing, and I know you and I have talked about it probably off radio more than we have on, but and it's just my fiery Irish blood. But I'm tired of turning the other cheek. I'm tired of letting them take God out of schools and take God out of this and take God out of that. Guess what? It doesn't work.
Well, I'll stick with Jesus, who said to turn the other cheek, okay?
Yeah.
But at the same time, I don't like to see Christian organizations who are apologetic or ashamed of who they are. We have an important role in this world to play.
Yeah.
Jesus told us that, and we ought to be able to play it without fear that somehow people are going to think less of us.
Yeah, and you know what? If you feel differently than Pastor and I do, email me, and I promise I'll be kind. If you're kind to me in the email, I'll be kind back, I promise. But tell me why it's so important that we flush down the toilet the origin of one of the most fantastic organizations, forget in Omaha or Nebraska, in the nation, maybe in the world. Because somebody says, well, I'm offended by your Christianity. Tell me that in an email. It's mac@theviewfromapew.com. I'd love to hear from you. All right, so it's still Monday, and we're still talking about music this week, and you've got a couple songs you want me to play at one point or another.
Yes, we're going to get to that.
All right.
And notice some of the sounds that are a little bit different than what we traditionally think of when we think of religious music. I want to mention, Mac, to you that I was gone to Colorado on vacation.
Yes.
I took some time with the kids out
Again.
there. Yeah.
I've talked to your kids. They're tired of it. Bring him back, would you? Put him back on the radio 3-4 times a week.
They probably are. They're, I'm eating at their house and
Yeah,
so
yeah.
send him back. However, one of the places we wanted to see during the time I was there was Pikes Peak. Now, I hadn't been to Pikes Peak since I was a kid. My parents took us there, brothers and sisters, when we were young. So I was kind of looking forward to going up Pikes Peak. Pikes Peak is over 14,000 feet.
Wow.
It's one of the tall mountains in Colorado.
Yeah.
But what's unique about it, it's one you can drive all the way up to the top. You don't have to get out and pick your way up there, But
isn't it kind of windy and you got to be careful, or is it a 4-lane highway?
Oh, no. There's switchbacks going back and forth.
Okay.
And you do have to be pretty careful and not overheat your engine or wear out your brakes. And, there's all sorts of issues with driving up there. But it's very safe at the same time. And we had a very good trip, got all the way to the top, got some great pictures on top. One of the things that you're always reminded about with Pikes Peak is the fact that there was a gal back in the 1800s by the name of Catherine Lee Bates who was in Colorado, and she was looking at Pikes Peak, and she was inspired by the beauty of this 14,000-foot mountain.
Wow, 14,000 feet.
It was from that inspiration.
That's almost 3 miles.
That's a long way.
5,285 feet is a mile.
Yep, that's right.
Wow.
But she was so inspired at this mountain, which we even call today America's Mountain, that she wrote the song "America the Beautiful."
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was at the moment of looking at Pikes Peak. So
but she didn't mention it. But
she didn't mention it in the song, but that's the inspiration, that where it all came from was from the view of Pikes Peak.
Okay, now I may be wrong here. That happens a couple times every minute, but doesn't America the Beautiful, doesn't it have something about mountains? And
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes. because she had been to Colorado and she had seen the mountains, but it was just that huge peak that rises up above the others, you know, and just looks gorgeous. And
is that the mountain on the MGM or whatever movie company is, Paramount, whatever? I don't know.
It could be, but
all right.
I'm not aware of that information.
And what was her name?
Catherine Lee Bates wrote America the Beautiful.
Kathy Bates.
Yeah.
That's not who I'm thinking of.
I think that's an actress, but
yes.
Anyway.
All right. Well, we are.
I mention it because of the tie into music. America the Beautiful is one of the great songs that we have in this country. But in religious music, we have a lot of great music. And patriotic is different than the religious area, of course.
Right.
But I've always said Christians have some of the best music.
Oh, yeah, well, we do. I mean, everybody else is... I mean, and everybody knows what they're saying except me.
Well, sometimes me too, I have to admit that. But Christianity has such a variety of different music. We have music backgrounds that our music came from. We have different forms of music. When I say religious music, most people probably think the great hymns. And we talked a couple weeks ago, we talked about some of the great hymns and the meaning of the great hymns. But before there were the great hymns, there were other styles of music. And those styles of music were probably what Christians sang. We're gonna start with one, which is actually some Jewish music, some Jewish folk music. Shalom. It's a very common, well-known tune with Jewish singers and Jewish words to it.
And that'll be where we begin Wednesday at 4 o'clock. And we've got 3 songs we're going to play for you Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And we thank you very much for taking a part in the show. And sorry we took up the time up front, but I think that's worth it on a Christian radio station to see. I don't know.
I do too. And we have a lot more to say about music and the importance of music, but as it relates to how we live the Christian life.
Yeah, all right. That's a great deal. I'm Mac McKoy, and if I haven't told you lately, thanks for listening. Love this job. Couldn't do it without you. My co-host, of course, Pastor Delmar Austin, and we want to thank the folks from DivineTruthChristianStore.com. Anything you need, anytime, online, or at 84th and Harrison in Omaha. Thanks for the sponsorship, and thanks for listening.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find more.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
Thank you, Emily. Appreciate that. I'm Mac. We're back. It is a beautiful Wednesday, and we enjoy spending our 4 o'clock hour with you, and you can always go back and listen to any of the shows or watch them if you're a visual person, because we do produce a webcast, not just a podcast. Podcasts are all over the place. Apple products, Amazon Music, Podcast Addict, Spotify. We're on all of them thanks to our producer, Garth. But we are also visually on YouTube. And so just go to YouTube and search for The View From A Pew, and you'll be able to catch our shows going a long, long way back. There's a couple channels on there that will take you back to 1998 when I started a webcast platform in Des Moines. and was one of the first in the country doing it. The Register wrote a big story about it. It went on to USA Today, and my phone was just flooded with people saying, "How you doing it? What are you doing?" Well, I wasn't the brains behind it. I was just the guy who was promoting it. But anyway, it's nice to see that here we are 20-some years later, and everything's going great with the internet and delivering content and messages, and in this case, love on the internet. All right, Pastor, what's the first song we're going to play today, and tell me about it?
Well, we're going to play, first of all, Shalom, which is a well-known Jewish folk song. It has religious content. May peace be with you is the meaning of Shalom. But the reason that we're playing it is because this was religious music. This was the sound of religious music, not that particular song, but this was the sound of religious music even back into Old Testament times. The sound of the Jewish folk music is similar. If you get a collection of different songs together and listen to them, they have the same kind of light, emotional, kind of either happy or sad, but kind of an emotional sound to them. And I think you'll enjoy this one just to kind of get a feel for what the sound of religious music was.
All right. Now, do we know who's doing this? Do we know from what year it was recorded?
Oh, yeah, it was recorded just a few years back, and it's a group of Jewish singers, and they're singing in Hebrew, of course.
And it goes back to before Christ's time.
Well, it's very similar to the kind of music that developed over time within the Jewish community.
All right. So here is a little bit, itty-bitty bit of Shalom, and we'll get it to you here as we download it and get it going. There we go. Okay, now I want to just ask you a question. I don't mean to be funny here, but when that second part where they picked it up,
yes,
I see people in my head dancing.
Yes.
But wouldn't that be Greek?
I don't think so. I think that Jewish folk dancing was for hundreds of years.
Okay.
Was a part of their music.
All right. And I noticed on the video that they were standing in front of a wall. That wasn't the Wailing Wall, was it?
That was. It was the Western Wall.
But it had writing on it. It had like a name on it.
Well, they may superimpose that.
Okay.
But, that was the background to it. And it was an album that was created.
Okay.
But Shalom is a well-known chorus that I don't know how long has been around, but I think it's very similar to the kind of early Jewish music.
Yeah.
And it's very different, of course, from what we think of when we think in terms of religious music. But for them, that was kind of the sound of the music that you would write and the music that you sang.
All right, what I'd like to do, with your permission, I'd like to play it once more, now that folks have heard it a time.
Okay.
It's only 40 seconds long. And if you can envision, 30 men standing at the foot of the Wailing Wall, and the Wailing Wall is probably 60 feet high, 50 feet high, Beautiful, beautiful picture, and you can catch that, of course, on YouTube. Yeah, this is the San Diego Jewish Men's Choir. All right. And yeah, if you go to YouTube, you can see that. And you know what I may do? I may put that in the hotkeys and play that every once in a while. I like that.
That's nice.
Yeah.
It's a nice little clip.
You know, I've always said this, and this goes back to the fact that for 50 years I was a God guy.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I don't even know who my Jewish friends were, I know I must have had some, but I always said I must have a little Jewish in me.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I was back, and you've been there also, to the Holy Land, that's a life-changing experience.
It really is.
And to this day, I can tell you how I feel differently about the Stations of the Cross, about I was in the tomb.
Yes.
They let you walk in, and it's about the size of a small bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, if you ever get a chance to go, love to have you go sometime.
Mac, I told you in a previous program about having been there at the Western Wall and joining in a group of Jewish men who were singing and dancing together.
Yeah.
And it was quite an experience to do that, even though I didn't know the Hebrew and couldn't sing along with them the same. It was still very powerful, very moving for me. I was inspired by it.
Sorry, hold on. I screwed up. No, not you, Mac. Okay. I was setting up the next song. Sorry.
Okay.
It's ready. Whenever you are.
But that kind of music is the kind of music that I was involved in that experience, and music that I've heard, because I've listened to different kinds of Jewish music, has kind of a similar sound to it. And I think it's good to listen to that and recognize that this was the music of godly people before Christianity. Before Jesus was even born, Jews were singing the Psalms. They were singing. I don't know how simple the music was at that time, but they were singing. They were glorifying God.
Yeah.
And there's a powerful connection there between the Jewish faith and the Jewish music, which affected Christianity then later on.
Yeah, I like that music.
Yeah.
It's kind of what they call a sound worm. You ever heard of that? You get a thing in your head.
Yes.
You can't get it out of your head, and you find yourself humming it all day. Hum, shalom, shalom, shalom.
There's a lot of rhythm to it.
Yeah.
And again, it's kind of light music. It's not real heavy or deep. It's just something that catches in your brain very well.
Well, and the interesting thing is that's the San Diego Men's Jewish Choir.
Yes.
And they're all over standing in front of the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, whatever you call it, over there in Jerusalem.
Now, the next music that we're going to listen to is music that came from somewhere in the Middle Ages. It is from a musical selection of Gregorian chants.
Chants, all right.
Okay?
All right, let's put that on for you, and let's listen to what that sounds like. Okay, you said that was Gregorian?
Gregorian.
Gregorian.
Gregorian chants.
And what is Gregorian?
Well, Gregory was one of the popes of the Middle Ages.
Okay.
And there's a connection there with his term as the head of the church.
All right, so this was actually named after him at the time he was a pope.
Well, I believe that there's a connection there with his term of service.
But we still have this music being performed now. I mean, in 2023.
Well, just like the Jewish music that we listen to also. But Gregorian chants really originated during the time of the Middle Ages. And they were And I don't know, they could have even been before that. We don't know everything exactly about the history of music, but we know that they were singing them a lot during that time. One of the things that you notice about that, it's unaccompanied.
Right.
There are not musical instruments.
A cappella.
Yeah, a cappella, that's right. In the Bible, in the Old Testament, it talks a lot about all the different musical instruments and playing those, and that was true of Jewish music. Now in the Middle Ages, in the church, it's monks that are writing this music, and it's monophonic, which there's very little change. There's a little up and down on the musical scale. Right, it's pretty much the same. And probably the reason that it's unaccompanied and that it's sung the way that it is for the sound that it creates. It creates kind of an otherworldly sound.
Yeah, let's listen to it one more time before we run out of time today.
Okay.
A Gregorian chant.
Yes.
All right, kids, have fun. Well, we're going to be back tomorrow at this same time with more music, faith-based music, but some stuff that came from before our time. Speaking of our time, we thank you for listening to The View From A Pew here every day on your local radio station and live every day on theviewfromapew.com. And that's, of course, at YouTube.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find more.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
Thank you, Emily, and thank you, DivineTruthChristianStore.com, for being one of our sponsors. We've got a couple new sponsors that we're going to be picking up in the next couple weeks, and I make a habit that I only have sponsors who I do business with. So when I tell you about them, I can tell you my experience. Anyway, it's another Thursday, and we're live here on The View From A Pew, and thank you very much for listening today and joining us. And if you're live, appreciate that you take the time. But if you are watching this on YouTube or listening to a podcast, just let me know. And let me know what we can do better for you. It's Mac, M-A-C like macaroni, at theviewfromapew.com.
And in our last program, we were talking about Gregorian chants.
Yes.
We played that music. Well, this was music that came from the Middle Ages, a whole different sound to it than the Jewish folk music that we listened to before that, and a whole different sound than the great hymns, which took place later in time. But this is the development of music that is taking place as years are going by. And each one of these different forms of music has a very legitimate role in the development of worship, worshiping God.
Now, I want to ask you a question, Pastor. You said in our last show yesterday that there were musical instruments, and this was the way they created music from the Old Testament all the way through the what do you call them, times?
Yeah, all through the Old Testament.
Yeah.
You know, when the Psalms write about praising God, it talks about praising God with the lute, with the, and then it goes down through this list of different instruments, the kinds of instruments that were used back in Bible times. And so obviously the Jewish people who were singing those psalms, they were also using instruments.
So why?
They always had instruments of percussion. They always had horns. They always had some of the same instruments that we have today.
But why are there some churches, now I don't mean denomination, I mean individual buildings, who frown on percussion or things like that? Is that just...
Well, I do believe music...
If you're too old, then...
I do believe that music can be used in the wrong way. And we'll talk on that before the end of the week. But at the same time, there are different styles of music. And music basically uses the different styles of music basically use the same elements all the way. Now, with the Gregorian chants, they were unaccompanied. They were not, musical instruments were not used because there was something about the unaccompanied a cappella voice that was just sounded almost like the angels singing. It was otherworldly. In Jerusalem, I had the opportunity of, one of the times I was there, of visiting the church of St. Anne.
Church of that?
Well, it's near...
This was in the proper city.
It's in the old city of Jerusalem. And the Church of St. Anne is supposedly dedicated to the mother of the Virgin Mary.
Mary, yeah.
Okay? In the church, it has great acoustics.
Oh, yeah.
And so choirs love to show up there and sing. Our group went in, and we tried to sing together. We sang some old hymns, and just listen to the sound.
Like Itsy Bitsy Spider, one of those kind?
No, I forget the songs, but they were...
You and Me and a Dog Named Boo?
They were Christian hymns that we sang.
I'm sorry.
But... it was just the sound was so good. And there is something about the Gregorian chants that is just, it's just, wow, it touches your soul, as you listen to that.
Well, I think I remember telling you that we were in the Church of the Sepulchre.
Yes.
Which is one of the two places that Jewish people and people in that region have agreed that one of these two places is where Jesus died on the cross. But picture that stone castle and stone floors and nothing soft. And there were all these people from different backgrounds, different countries, and they were walking through and singing. Of course, they had no music. They had no nothing. Oh, my gosh. And what was really fun is I remember a couple times, even though I couldn't speak the language, I began to understand what hymn or what song they were beginning to perform for us. Yeah. All a cappella, of course.
And beautiful sounds that arise. Now, remember, this is Christian music. It is the main Christian music of its time. And people are responding to that, and that becomes a part of worship, and that is how people feel closer to God. So, I mean, that's very significant. Now, one more step beyond that is the time that classical music is really forming, and the great, masters of music, Beethoven and Bach and Mozart and all those are writing music, which becomes music for the church, too.
Okay.
We have a short clip of Sheep May Safely Graze by Johann Sebastian Bach.
Hold on. What's the name of the song?
Sheep May Safely Graze.
And this is Bach.
This is Bach.
All right. Now, for those of you that are just joining us this week, on tomorrow's show, we're going to repeat these three songs so we can make sure you hear all three in one day. But you can also go to our website or YouTube and listen to them there, too. All right. So this is Bach. And Sheep May
Safely Graze.
All right. You're never going to hear this on the radio in town, I'll tell you that. Problem with the file. Here we go. Sounds a little bit like "Come All Ye Faithful."
Might have a connection. I mean, a sound similar to that. Now, one of the things you'll notice about this, there's no words.
Right.
This is and this is played by an orchestra.
Yes. Okay.
There is instrumentation.
I didn't realize there were no words. I guess I didn't pay attention to that.
It is part of classical music. It is the music itself that you are listening to. It's the sound that's going on.
Now, were those lutes or were those flutes, or do we know?
This took place in the 1700s somewhere, and they had instruments that were very similar.
Yeah, they had flutes, piccolos. Yeah. Marching bands always had piccolos and things like that. Okay. Right. All right.
Orchestras, of course, have string instruments too, and there's a fullness of sound. Classical music, the reason it's loved by so many people is, it's such a intentional music.
It's very emotional.
Yeah, it's very emotional and just very powerful. Bach was a German composer. He was a Lutheran, and he wrote it not for any religious purposes. He wrote it to basically to get across the idea that sheep can safely graze when a good monarch reigns. When you have a good king who's in control of the country and he's doing the right things, then sheep can safely graze because there's no worry of somebody coming in and attacking and carrying them away or destroying their lives and so that is the idea that's there. You almost see the picture of the sheep out there on the field grazing away as this beautiful music is playing. Well, everybody's touched by this kind of music. I mean, it's great music, and this particular song becomes used in many, many worship situations. In fact, it becomes used as a part of Catholic Mass that takes place on a very regular basis just because of the beauty of it.
Let's listen to it one more time. Okay, now I know you always tell the truth, but didn't you think you heard a choir there at the end? No?
I didn't hear a choir, but...
Well, I mean, if there wasn't voices singing, that's how even more incredible the orchestra does. What time is it? All right, just listen to this, especially at the end. It sounds like that there are women...
I can't hear it the same way you do because I don't have a
headset. Okay, I'm going to run this ahead a little bit.
But it's just the background music.
All right, so listen carefully, and I think you'll hear women singing voices. Right there.
Well, if there are words that are put to it, it was not done at the time. It could have been added somewhere along in more recent times.
Yeah, and I don't think I heard words. I just thought I heard women singing in the choir. All right.
There's beautiful orchestration that takes place, and it becomes a part just listening to the sounds of this classical music. This classical music is very different than the Gregorian chants. The Gregorian chants are very different from the early Jewish folk music, right? There are three very different forms. And that's the reason I wanted to use those things to show the difference that religious music has taken in the past.
So we've got 3 kinds of music, 3 cuts. Tomorrow on our Friday show, we're going to play each one of them again so you can hear it. And remember, you can always catch this at YouTube. Just go to youtube.com and put in search for The View From A Pew. I want to thank the good folks at DivineTruthChristianStore.com for supporting this program on a daily basis. We really appreciate it. And if you're looking for anything Christian, go to DivineTruthChristianStore.com and order it online.
Divine Truth Christian Store, where you'll find more.
The comments heard on The View From A Pew are those of Mac McKoy and are not necessarily the opinions of his guests, his producer Garth, any one particular denomination or religion, the church lady, Mr. Lemke, Pastor Craig, or anyone else of sound mind and body. Now, here is today's The View From A Pew, heard all around the world on YouTube. Just search for The View From A Pew.
Good Friday afternoon. We thank you for joining us on your local radio station as well as online. All places like Podcast Addict, Listen Notes, RSS, Castbox, whatever you use to listen to podcasts will be there. Just search for The View From A Pew. Want to thank you for taking your time this week. We've had a great series of shows this week, and it's been on Christian music. And no, I don't mean the stuff that they play on the radio. Although there are some classical stations, mostly public radio, that you'll hear this kind of music on, and I really like it. Mm-hmm. Very soothing, very relaxing. So we're going to play each one of them again, and we're going to start out just in the same order. And this is the San Diego Jewish Men's Choir.
Let me just set the stage just a little bit here. The reason that we've talked about these different styles of music is because people have a hard time with change. We talked about that in a previous series a ways back.
Yeah.
Change is always hard, and music is really connected with culture. And many people think in terms of great hymns. They are what religious music is about. Well, I've tried to show some other kinds of music that were not connected with great hymns, but they were good Christian music along the way. And even back before Christian times, even with the Jewish folk melodies. So that's what we're going to show you again today. We're going to play each selection that we've used, but just notice the different styles and notice how all of them are instrumental in a person's worship experience of getting to know God.
Yeah, but you know what? As we listen to them today, they really are different. I mean, we've kind of lopped them into one bucket, but that's one bucket of 100 in different kinds of music. So, all right, we're going to listen first to the San Diego Jewish Men's Choir, and they are at the Wailing Wall, and they're singing Shalom, and you're hearing it here on The View From A Pew. So this is when I hear this Greek dancing. All right, and if you go online, and I hope you do, just Google Shalom from the San Diego Jewish Men's Choir, and you'll see them standing in front of the Wailing Wall, and the Wailing Wall is probably 60 feet high, and there's all these men singing this, and it's really a cool visual as well.
There's something about those choruses that I believe is very upbeat. Some of those tunes are a little sadder, but many of those songs are very upbeat, and they go along with what we talked about in Psalms, where David is writing about praising God and praise Him, to the fullest extent, and that is what was a part of their worship. It was a part of their experience as followers of God. And it's very different than what we experience, and yet it was religious music that was very powerful.
Yeah. I enjoy the choirs. I just love a good choir. Now, we talked earlier about how music has changed, and we did a show around Christmas time, and we talked about some of the hymns and the traditional Christmas songs. We talked a little bit about music, instruments that were and were not used. As a pastor, it is not normal, and I don't mean that as negative, but there are some people, and I'm one of them. I want to raise my hand when I get that emotion that the Holy Spirit is living within this song. And I want to raise not like a teacher does. Mm-hmm. I always put my palm open, and sometimes I even rub my palm thinking that, well, Jesus' hand is in there, and we're listening to this music together. Why do you think it is that there are so many different ways of acceptable and unacceptable ways to praise God with music?
Music touches on emotions. Music is very connected with emotions. And when music is written and not only the words but the melodies are written in such a way to help uplift people emotionally, that is usually good for worship.
Yeah.
There are times that music is used and it's clearly not for that purpose. It's to bring out the other parts of emotions that that aren't the good things that Christians want in their lives.
Right.
But
like Elvis and his wigging around.
Well, I'm not going to categorize everybody.
I know
which side they fall in. But I'm just saying there are different styles that have always had an effect. So we need to be careful about being too critical about just because a new style comes along, a new way of expressing our praise to God.
Yeah, and I listen to contemporary Christian music, but I also listen to the Gatlins. I'm a big fan of gospel. I'm a big fan of what I would call American trilogy, which would kind of be folk music. And there are those songs that trigger a memory for us. Mm-hmm. I can't hear... I can only imagine that song without thinking about my niece's funeral. She was killed in a head-on accident, and we sang that song there. And every time I hear that song, I just choke up because I'm in that church in Platte, South Dakota at her funeral. So that happens also. All right, now the next one we're going to go to is this is the sheep. Oh, no.
Well, you can go to the sheep if you want to. Yeah. That's historically at a different time frame.
Would you want me to go to the chants?
Go to the Gregorian chants. That's what would be next on our historical samples.
Yeah, if you had to do all this, you wouldn't do that. All right, so here's the chants from the Gregorian chants.
Middle Ages.
So Gregorian, named after Pope Gregory. Now, they were singing words there.
They were singing in Latin, yes.
In Latin, okay. Yes. All right. Do you know Latin? Do you know what they were singing?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay. And, of course, it hasn't been too long. In fact, there are still a couple of churches here in Omaha that their entire service is still in Latin.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Oh.
and it's becoming, somebody just told me this, but it was a good source. It's becoming a very popular place for some of the young students at Creighton, because that's a Catholic school.
Yes.
And so it's cool now to know that in Latin. And so there's a couple churches that these kids visit, and they learn how to sing these words, sing these songs in Latin.
Latin is a beautiful language, and our language, even English, is connected with Latin, so it's good to understand Latin. But there is something, again, about the beauty of that simple sound, the monophonic kind of sound, the very little change in the on the scale of music, and listening to it rebound and reverberate within the confines of a church or monastery is, part of the power of what that music is.
Pastor Austin is with me today. I'm Mac McKoy. This is The View From A Pew, heard on your local radio station and all around the world. Yep, we can say that in 2023 at www.any podcast platform you want to choose, or if you like the visual, and we don't perform for the visual, we just have it, and that would be on youtube.com, and then search for The View From A Pew. All right, now...
you want to play that last segment, The Sheep May Safely Graze?
Yeah. Yes, I do, but let me get it out for you. All right, here we go. This is Bach, right?
This is Bach.
All right, Bach and sheep. Of course, that traditional sound was Bach. He wrote that song. Now, David was a sheep herder.
Yes.
And is it just a wives' tale, or did he play music to soothe the sheep? I know I heard that somewhere. Was it a lute, or what did he play?
Well, he played a harp. He had a harp, and that's what he played when King Saul called him to come and
yeah, but he wasn't packing that harp out in the wilderness with the sheep.
Oh, he probably was, but it was probably a handheld harp. It was a smaller harp that he used to write music while he was watching sheep.
Yeah.
I'm sure the sheep were glad to listen to the music.
Oh, yeah.
But his purpose there was to write music because he felt inspired as he's out there on the fields. Music is inspirational, and that's why it should always be a part of worship. It has a profound effect upon us. And these different categories that we've listened to, there are different forms of music. So when in the 21st century we come along, when we have different styles of music, let's listen for what is good. Not everything is good, but there's a lot of good music, and it can have a different style, and it can still speak to us and inspire us to worship God.
Well, thank you for coming back from vacation. Thanks for the peaches. And we'll be back next week. Do you know what we're going to talk about yet?
I don't yet. I'm catching up still from vacation time.
Let's come up with what does the Bible say about blank?
Okay. We can do that.
Maybe each day we could come up with something different. Get back to the basics of the Bible and do that a little bit.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I thank you for listening today, and I appreciate the sponsors. Of course, our primary sponsor, DivineTruthChristianStore.com. We appreciate you for listening. You can always reach out to us at Mac, M-A-C, at theviewfromapew.com. Thanks for listening. God bless you.